You know Gray Bar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
Welcome into this week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast. I'm Tyler Vaughn, Sam Dykstra in New York City, the official podcast of minor league baseball, and the first one of the month of November of 2020. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Tyler. How are you?
All right. You?
Okay. It's a big week for America, and still
big week.
Yeah, I would say coming down, but not really.
Big election on Tuesday. The Major League Gold Glove Award winners selected. Big stuff. I know you're all glued to your TV watching Harold Reynolds and the Gold Glove electoral map, I assume.
If only it came down to that. That would honestly, that would make so much more sense than this year's Gold Gloves did.
I actually would really like a full-on live voting award show like that, where there's just there's a big board and there's a Steve Kornacki of baseball who's wandering around over in the American League West. We're seeing a lot of returns coming in from Anaheim and Seattle right now. That could really push things in favor of Evan White's Gold Glove candidacy. He won.
San Diego has decided just not to send in their ballots today.
Right.
They'll send them out on Thursday.
We're not going to be hearing from them for some time. It's all it was very well-timed election results.
That brings up one thing that I did want to get to this week, Tyler, and we didn't talk about it, but how can we use one of these boards in minor league baseball? How would we do this? Because I really want this to become a thing for us. Would it? I don't what's a way we could use one of these touchscreens?
We do need to figure that out. We'll storyboard some ideas. Those of you who have some of your own, get in touch. Podcast at MILB.com. I feel like there's got to be some sort of dividing line between people's favorite concession stand items or something. But that would be a lot more than just a two-party system. We'd have to have a lot of different colors.
Oh, I see the way you're taking it.
And
you're taking it like building an electoral map. Is that what
right? Exactly. Oh, you were just thinking of using the board, not necessarily the map.
I'm just thinking about trying to how do we put a map on a board and explain minor league baseball that way?
Oh, okay. I'm
trying to think of
you and I could certainly do that.
Yes, we could certainly do that. Maybe that'll be a YouTube series coming up at some point. But the other way I was thinking is as transaction season comes up again next year, right around that All-Star game time, around June, at minor league All-Star game time, around June, when guys start to get called up and we can show where they're going and what the leagues look like, and we zoom in and these are the top 100 prospects left, and we zoom out and then we go to the Carolinas, something like that. I don't know. That's what came to mind, but I'm sure there are other ideas out there.
I like it. We'll ruminate on this. We'll think. We'll pour things over. There's obviously going to be a lot to discuss in the coming months as it pertains to baseball and all things, and we will be with you throughout here on the Show Before the Show from MILB.com. Again, he's Sam. I'm Tyler. Thanks for tuning in wherever you found us. We are on all of your favorite podcasting services. If you're just coming across us for the first time, you can rate and review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Google Play and Spotify and everywhere else, and check out the past episodes of the show if you are there, or at MILB.com/podcast. You can give us a rating and a review and a subscription and such, and get in touch with the show, podcast at MILB.com. Let's dive in. There's honestly not a ton for us to cover as of yet for the baseball offseason, but we will hit on a couple of topics of things to keep your eyes on for the next few weeks. Obviously, no Arizona Fall League this offseason. There are some international leagues that have started play. The Mexican Pacific Winter League, which now goes by Liga Arco. It's a sponsorship deal, but the league that is the Mexican Pacific Winter League. They've gotten started. I believe the league in the Dominican Republic is getting started soon. The DR will ramp up. Puerto Rico I'm not entirely sure of the Roberto Clemente League there, but Panama and some of the other Latin American countries, Venezuela, I'm not sure what their situation is going into winter ball, but some of those leagues are getting underway. But with no AFL, and of course, with the conclusion of the World Series, it's a very quiet time right now on the baseball landscape. And yet there are still things for us to cover. There was some bummer, but not completely unexpected news that came out this week in that the winter meetings have been canceled for 2020. They'll be held virtually. But the in-person event known as the winter meetings, which we talk about every year, is technically a minor league baseball event. There are always so many major league things that go on at the winter meetings. That's technically a minor league baseball hosted and organized event. That will not happen in 2020. And yet still, there are some things that normally orbit around the winter meetings that will go forward. 40-man roster decisions in the Rule 5 draft for this year.
Yeah, so a couple dates to still keep in mind here. November 20th is the date in which organizations have to protect players from the Rule 5 draft if they are eligible. So they have to put them on the 40-man roster. Anybody who's not on the 40-man roster and Rule 5 eligible by November 20th or after November 20th is eligible to be taken. So we'll be seeing a lot of movement in the coming weeks. You're already seeing a little bit of that in terms of guys who are on the 60-day IL at the end of the year getting taken off that. That means they take up 40-man space. There's still going to be a little bit of movement in that way. I don't think we're going to see trades necessarily, at least in a big way, to clear space. But teams are going to have to clear space because they do want to protect their prospects and not lose them in something as easy as the Rule 5 draft. The Rule 5 draft itself is going to be held on December 10th. We don't have details on that just yet on how that's going to work. I'm sure it's going to be virtual, just like everything else that was a draft in 2020. It's actually fairly simple to have virtually, I would think. One of the things that always happens at the Rule 5 draft is it's just guys sitting at their table, getting up, finding the nearest microphone, saying what their pick is, or saying pass and then going back. Now it's going to be, hitting unmute on Zoom and doing it that simply. I mean, I think it's going to be pretty easy. It might even go a little bit quicker this year, which will personally make my head spin, but will be a lot easier for you guys to follow at home. So it's unfortunate. It was supposed to be in Dallas this year. Speaking personally, that would be the first time I would be at a winter meetings in Dallas. It would have been fascinating given where the sport is right now. In terms of transactions, that's what we tend to think about with the winter meetings, is that's when trades go down. That's sometimes when free agent signings go down because everybody's in the same space. That's not going to happen now. So we're not going to see those transactions centered around that. And we still don't know what the sport is technically going to look like in 2021. So as teams are trying to figure out, should we go acquire a bat? We don't know if the NL is going to have a DH. So should National League teams go out and get DH only types? We don't know. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in terms of having a bulk of moves around those December dates, that's probably not going to happen. But as always, we have the Rule 5 draft, which provides a decent amount of excitement for us minor league followers.
So some stuff to still keep your eye on as we head toward the offseason in 2020, now into the offseason in 2020. And as we did point out, and kind of in a jocular manner, but Major League Gold Glove Awards announced last night. So, of course, the biggest winner of election night, the Colorado Rockies third baseman Nolan Arenado, 8th straight Gold Glove to begin his career. That's the most to start a career for a third baseman. Are
you endorsing a Colorado incumbent there, Tyler?
That is one incumbent in Colorado that I would very heartily endorse. But we did see some really cool selections, guys that we have been, kind of in touch with over their rises to the major league ranks in recent years. And some guys, of course, who have been a little bit more entrenched at the big leagues over the last, half decade or decade or so. But how about somebody like Evan White wins a Gold Glove? Evan White, who we talked about in every single prospect primer organization all-stars, it feels like, about just how good his defensive tool was. He wins a Gold Glove at first base as a rookie for the Seattle Mariners. Javier Baez, a guy who just continues to be an absolute phenom at shortstop. He grabs one, kind of a middle of his career guy. Another early career guy who we used to love on the site, Tyler O'Neill of the St. Louis Cardinals, who's had his bumps in some major league time over the last couple of seasons, but he wins a Gold Glove. Luis Robert captures a Gold Glove as a rookie. He became, I believe I read, the first White Sox outfielder since like 1971 to win a Gold Glove, and he does so in his rookie year, which is incredible. Trent Grisham of the San Diego Padres goes from making that really tough play on the error in the playoffs last year for the Brewers to winning a Gold Glove with the Padres the following year. And then one award very close to my heart, and not Nolan Arenado, but Alex Gordon, who was a legend at the University of Nebraska when I was in school there and retired this year. Before the end of the season, he announced his retirement. He goes out on a Gold Glove, his 8th of his major league career, finishes his career with 4 consecutive Gold Gloves, which I found very cool. Congrats to Gordo on a great career and a Gold Glove to end on and a World Series ring to take with him. But there are some really interesting inclusions in this group, but that's not what we're going to talk about anyway. What we are going to talk about is there obviously with no minor league season this year, we did not have those defensive awards, but we saw some guys in this conversation who have been dudes who have won those awards. Roberto Perez, the catcher for Cleveland, wins the American League Gold Glove at that position. Evan White, we talk about. Had he been up at the major league level a little bit earlier, tough that he plays in the National League, but Ke'Bryan Hayes has been a defensive phenom in his time in the minor leagues. Sam, if there are some standout guys right there who you may have had an eye on in this capacity if we had had a minor league season in 2020, removing somebody like Evan White from the conversation, obviously, because he has already made his way up. Who would have been in that conversation for you this year?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Ke'Bryan Hayes. That's where we have to start here, obviously, at being at third base. And I've almost been flabbergasted at his minor league career and the fact that he hasn't been a shortstop, because everybody speaks so well about his play at third. And the answer I always get is that if he's so good at there, why would we ever move him? So yeah, Ke'Bryan Hayes. And he showed that in his brief time in Pittsburgh during the season. So there's no reason to think that he can't win that award next year if he's able to get 140 plus games at the hot corner for the Pirates. So he would be my number 1 pick. But my number 2 pick, who we also got to see a little bit of, which was also really fun to see in the postseason, was Christian Pache of the Atlanta Braves. Pache, lots of speed, lots of ability to cover ground, really, really good arm. There were a couple of times where he got tested and didn't quite work, but it was always a battle. It was always close if he got the ball in right center during the postseason and somebody was trying to go second to third. It was at least close. I remember Mookie Betts tried that on him at one point. And the other thing I like about Pache in that series was Texas has a really big outfield, especially in center field. So seeing him cover that amount of ground, attempt to make some catches over that fence was exciting. And I think the Braves are going to get, again, 100 plus games of that out of Pache next year. He's somebody who may not make spectacular plays, but he's going to cover so much ground that the analytics are going to smile on him. Now, the 2020 Gold Gloves were only based on analytics. I think it came from a Sabre stat, DPI, I believe. So there were no votes. There were no votes this year. That was in part because every team only played teams within their division and within their geographic location. So if you were a team in the AL East, you didn't get to see a team in the AL West. So it was difficult for you to vote on that award. Again, hopefully next year we are back to something normal and that teams are able to travel and see more teams and we get votes again. But I think Pache is going to get smiled on by analytics, and anybody who watches him play puts at least a 70 on his glove, if not an 80. So he's definitely up there. Nick Madrigal at second base is certainly a possibility at winning the award at some point. Just because, again, second base, we don't necessarily think of as being a great defensive position because it's usually just failed shortstops. But he seems to have pretty good range there. He has the arm for second base in so much as that matters at that position. I think that could work out. And he's still technically a prospect, will still be technically able to win Rookie of the Year next year, should he give that a push. So those are kind of 3 names I would really circle right now. Am I missing anybody, Tyler?
No, I think those are probably the ones to keep the closest eye on. It's always so difficult too to project that tool going toward a major league career because you just don't know how defensive skills are going to translate. But it always seems like if you're a great defensive player in the minor leagues, the chances are that you hold on to that skill set climbing toward the major leagues, because it's just something that is so much more of a, I feel like you can teach more of the hitting components that you need to be successful at the major league level. If you're a bad fielder, you're just generally a bad fielder. I mean, you can be made into an adequate fielder, but you rarely see guys, and oddly enough, one guy who may be an exception to this, Nolan Arenado, who I know when he was coming up, a lot of people said, he's kind of plodding, doesn't have great reactions. We don't know what kind of major league defender he will be. And then obviously he's turned himself into one of the greatest third basemen to ever play. But if you're a guy who has a good defensive skill set, Evan White's the perfect example. That's going to carry you a very long way.
Yeah, and the funny thing about Evan White is that he reminded me a lot of Cody Bellinger, what people were saying about him at first base. And again, I go back to what I said about Brian Hayes about if he's so good at this position, why don't we try to move him up the middle, get him a little more time at a premium position? It could still happen for the Pirates. I don't think it's going to happen for him. He's just been playing third base for so long. But with Cody Bellinger, everybody said he's incredibly athletic at first base. He's going to win Gold Gloves there. And guess what? They moved him to center field, and now he's won an MVP in the outfield. So the great thing about the minor leagues is that it's a place to still experiment with positions. We're going to hear this coming up in the interview with Aaron Sabato of the Minnesota Twins organization. Every draft thing I saw from him going into the draft, that he's stuck at first base, but talking to him about his time at Instructs, he played a lot of first base, yes, but they moved him around the infield just to get a sense of it. So that's still technically on the table for him. We'll see how that works out. He actually played shortstop in high school. So maybe there's a chance he moves over to third base. The Tigers are certainly trying that now with Spencer Torkelson as well, another 2020 first rounder. So people can grow that tool as much as we think they are set in stone in the minor leagues. And the guys who start out really good are always going to be that way. And usually they are, but it is a tool that can grow just as much as any other one. One name I do want to throw out, funny enough, it's funny that I forgot this, but I do want to point out his defense as well, is Adley Rutschman. Part of the reason why we think he's such a great prospect and why he was the first overall pick in 2019 is because he is such a gifted catching prospect on the defensive side, not just on the offensive side. Really good switch hitter, obviously, but I think he was calling his own games in college, which is very rare. Everybody loved to work with him when he was climbing his way up through the Orioles system. He got a lot of experience with that at Instructs and at the alternate site roster this summer. Would not be surprised at all if Adley Rutschman almost has a Yadier Molina-esque Gold Glove run because of what he's able to do behind the dish.
So that'll wrap up a brief opening segment on this week's episode of the Show Before the Show. We gave you like an hour and 45 minutes last week. Don't give us any guff.
Maybe they're happy. I don't know.
That could be. But we do have a couple of conversations coming up. Sam's going to catch up with Benjamin Hill in a little while, as well as the 8th ranked prospect in the Minnesota Twins organization, Aaron Sabato. Sam, tells about that. That's coming up just around the bend.
Yeah. So beyond just the defensive questions that I just brought up about it, Sabato, we get into what it's like going through Instructs right now, and this is basically his pro debut. Is to work out at Instructs. What is that like? How does he introduce himself to the organization, and what is he focused on as somebody who didn't get to show anything at the alternate site roster? We also get into what he was able to do at UNC, what he could have done at UNC if he had an even longer sophomore season. He was eligible as a sophomore this year for the draft, and so many more things, including his favorite home run, all that stuff. So you'll hear it here coming up. Here's me with Aaron Sabato.
This past year has shown us that without your health, you have nothing. If you're not well, you can't work, look after yourself, or take care of your family. You can't enjoy the life you've worked so hard to build. That's why you need to prioritize taking care of your long-term health today, before it goes from good to bad to worse. So invest in your long-term health with Forward. Forward is intelligent medicine with a personal touch. Their doctors are dedicated to catching top killers like cancer and heart disease early before it's too late. And catching them early could save you tens of thousands of dollars in the long run. Everyone's health history is different, which is why Forward doctors personalize a health plan with you. based on your genetics, lifestyle, and biometrics to achieve long-term results and ensure nothing gets missed. It's time to invest in a doctor that's invested in you. Go to goforward.com today to protect your future health. That's goforward.com. Goforward.com.
Having your own home is awesome, but it's also a lot of work. The good news? Finding help for your projects is easier than ever. Introducing Angie, the app that puts all your home care needs at your fingertips. Need a pro to fix that emergency leak? Maybe find someone to build a deck, or even set your seasonal tasks on autopilot. Angie can handle all that and more. Expert pros, hundreds of home projects, clear pricing, and the easiest way to book and pay in seconds. This is Angie, your home for everything home. Download the app today.
Well, we're very happy this week to be joined on the Minor League Baseball podcast, the show before the show, by 27th overall pick this year, former UNC slugger, now Minnesota Twins prospect, Aaron Sabato. Aaron, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, no, this is great. So we wanted to have you on this week just to kind of get a flavor of somebody who's been through instructs, and this is your first real taste of pro ball. So take us through what you went through at instructs with Minnesota and what your experience was like down there.
Yeah, I mean, this was obviously, like you mentioned, my first taste of pro ball. And I mean, it was awesome. I mean, instructs was, since that was the first time that I had played organized baseball because college got shut down since March. But instructs was just, I mean, it was a time to get out there, get a feel again of playing live games and inter squads and hitting every day, fielding every day, throwing, and just a way of getting your body back into just playing baseball again. And I think, it was really fun, and the Twins organization, everybody around was unbelievable. I mean, they made me fit in and made me feel like I was at home from the second that I got there, being the new guy. But it was awesome. I mean, they had a really good schedule, so it was 4 days a week. We would scrimmage. We would scrimmage Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, and then we were lifting every other day, fielding every other day, and they did a really good job of having it scheduled out and the days and making sure that really the only off time was in the afternoon, and it was baseball all day, which was something I was new. Going from college, usually I got classes for 4 hours in the morning, but now it's all baseball. And so I loved it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I just can't wait to keep playing for this organization.
Yeah. And what was your biggest takeaway from instructs? Like you said, this is the first time baseball is your job now, and it's the only thing you have to do. And your first time measuring yourself up against guys who you're going to be playing with and kind of in a weird way competing with to climb the Minnesota ladder. So what did you take away from that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I just think the biggest thing is, you go there and obviously, like you said, you're competing against all the other guys. But for me, that's all obviously inner competition stuff. But you want to go down there, you want to, you don't want to be that guy that everybody excludes from. And when you're hanging out, I went down there and I made it a goal to make friends with everybody. All the guys were unbelievable. And then you go about doing your business, and then because you want to be friendly with all those guys, because you can learn from all those guys. Those are guys that have been through instructs before, have been through full seasons, and so it was being able to pick their brains of how things were going. Yeah, obviously I'm competing against them, and when it comes down to it, you want to outwork them, and you want to surpass them. But you also want to learn from those guys. You want to know what works, what doesn't work. How do the seasons go? What's it like on your body? What's it like mentally? Are there good things to prepare for? How have you approached instructs, the years prior? And so you take things like that for guys that have been through it. That's what I would say about it.
Gotcha. No, sorry to interrupt you there, but you're talking about a lot of off the field stuff there. In terms of on the field stuff, again, measuring yourself up and trying to see how things are, or where you were at now as you get your career going. Where was your focus as you were getting at bats and scrimmages or getting defensive reps? Like, what were you most focused on in those weeks down at Fort Myers?
My most focus was just playing playing my game of, swinging at strikes, taking balls, and showing off my power. And so for me, what I really got to show while I was down there on the field was that I can play multiple positions. I mean, in the scrimmages, I played first base, but when we took practice and stuff, I showed that I can compete at first. They made us play first, second, third, and short there. And I showed that I can play all those positions and move just as well as some of the other guys. And I got complimented on it, and I fielded great. I looked great doing it. And I think that was something that I had got knocked for. And I think showing that and having the ability to play different positions only increases, my chances of moving up and the potential of my bat, that it can play multiple positions. So going there and proving that I can compete and play with those guys, and that I definitely deserve to be up there with the top prospects in the organizations. And so just little things like that.
That's interesting that you talk about moving around the infield, because I know in high school you were a shortstop and you moved pretty quick to first base at UNC. Where did you feel most comfortable on the infield outside of first base?
Yeah. I mean, growing up playing shortstop, like you said, I mean, I knew eventually I was going to switch. But for me, the most comfortable, honestly, I know it sounds cheesy, but it's just being an infielder. Playing shortstop and moving over to first, it's like third, and footwork's obviously a tiny bit different. But I grew up playing all those positions, and whether it's first, second, short, or third, wherever they put me, I know it's probably going to be corners. If anything, I know I can play those positions at a high level, and I'm only going to get better and better from here.
Oh, very cool. And you haven't officially played a minor league baseball game, I get that, but have you had a welcome to pro ball moment yet? Something that was especially eye-opening, maybe seeing high velocity, maybe something in BP or in the field, as you mentioned. What was that first really welcome to pro ball moment for you?
Yeah, I just think the welcome to, I mean, are you talking about in terms of struggling and things like that?
No, just in terms of, it could be anything. It could be something that was eye-opening in terms of, like you mentioned before, being a guy who baseball is your job now. Like, when did you really feel settled in as a pro ball player and all that encompasses, I guess?
I would say, I think the first time I stepped on the field, honestly, and now you're meeting kids that are 5-6 years older than me and kids that are 5-6 years younger than me, and realizing that we're all in the same organization, playing to the same positions, doing the same things, and competing against each other from all around the world. And I think that was probably the first time that I really realized that, you get there and you see all these kids, and you see that, they're all trying to go for the same goal, to make it to the big leagues. And I think that was probably the first time that I realized, okay, this is pro ball, this is what it's about.
Very cool. Well, we'll jump back a couple steps here. I mentioned before your time in high school, playing in a Connecticut high school in Brunswick. You went undrafted coming out of high school. I know you got a couple pro looks there, but you chose to go to UNC. Got off to a little bit of a slow start, but really turned things around there in 2019 and ended up with an OPS above 1,000. You hit 18 homers in 64 games that freshman year. Given all that followed and the fact that you only got 19 games this spring as a draft-eligible sophomore, how big was that 2019 season for you, putting yourself on the map, both as somebody who went undrafted the year before and eventually turned into a first-round pick?
Yeah, I mean, looking back at it now, obviously it was huge, and I think it's just one of those things. You try not to count during the season. You try not to think oh, if I have a great year, that'll set me up, being knowing that I was a sophomore eligible draft guy, and you try not to think that way. But obviously, looking back at it, it was huge. But you go out there every day, you want to compete and you want to show that you're the best player on the field. And so for me, that's what I wanted to do. And I knew that if I stuck to my game and kept my mindset and kept my mind and mentality even keeled and keep my confidence up, that I knew I could end up, where I ended up. And it's just all of just trusting the process and realizing that it's a long season. But if you keep working and you keep the right mindset, that ultimately, my talent was going to prevail, and I was going to, although I had little struggles here and there, I was going to end up where I wanted to in the end.
Yeah, and when you say about trusting the process, obviously that's a big buzz phrase now in sports, but what was that process? What do you feel like got the most out of your talent, especially your power, which, as any scout will tell you, is plus potential? What did you have to do to really unlock that at the college level?
I just had to be more disciplined. When I first got to college, it was a lot of like I wanted to do. Obviously, you want to do damage on every ball, but I just got over anxious. I was swinging at pitches I really didn't want. I really shouldn't have. And then I was maybe too selective on certain pitches in the zone, because I was overthinking a lot of things. And I think once I became more relaxed and really started honing in on balls that I know I could do damage on really, really high percentages, that my power ultimately came out. I was swinging at better pitches, and I was being able to put my swing on all the pitches that I wanted to and lay off the ones that I didn't. And I think that's what really separated me in my freshman season, because I knew that if I could get my A swing off, it's really and show my power, like you said, like they said, my power being plus, that it's going to separate me when I'm really on.
And speaking about being really on, just to go over these numbers for people at home who might not be aware of them, you got 19 games this year with UNC before things shut down. You hit 7 homers. You finished with a line of 292, 478, 708. Obviously really good across the board. 19 games, not a huge sample, but that's pretty much in line with what you did as a freshman, maybe some little improvements here and there. What do you feel like you were capable of doing this spring if you were able to get 60-plus games like you did in 2019?
I mean, I think I was hitting easily, average-wise, obviously I think well above 330, 350. Probably would hit 25-plus homers. And I think I would have walked, honestly, 75 to 80 times. I think it was something like close to 30 walks without being intentionally walked. I think maybe I got intentionally walked one time. I was walking, I think, because somebody asked me about it the other day, I think I was walking at one point 10 times in the last 2 series that we played. And I was kind of, like you said, what helped me my freshman year. Like I was becoming way more disciplined, and it was my second year now in college baseball. And I was really becoming acclimated of like, okay, like I know myself way better now this year, and I can keep going. And honestly, I thought, the sky was the limit. And obviously it stinks that it got shut down. But everything happens for a reason. And so I think, I'm blessed that it ended up that way, and that I'm in, honestly, I think the greatest organization in Major League Baseball.
And going into that draft experience, again, knowing that you're a draft-eligible sophomore, a little bit ahead of the curve because of your age, but what was your thought process going into that? Because everything you mentioned there, putting up potentially a 330, 340 average, hitting 25-plus homers, that could have only increased your stock, but you still did plenty in the year and a half you were given. Did you feel settled, like you'd done enough, or was there any part of you that felt like, hey, maybe I could have gone even higher if I'd given the chance? At least, was that your thought process going into June?
Yeah, I knew, because I think the one thing that held me back a tiny bit was the fact that I did not play summer ball after my freshman year. And so I think, if I had played summer ball, it would have been different. But honestly, those are obviously, those are all what ifs. But I'm sure definitely, like, if it was a full season and I had done what I know I was capable of doing, I'm sure it would have been different. And yeah, you think about it a little, but at the end of the day, like I said, like everything happens for a reason. And I honestly think like the season ended because of the disease, like COVID and everything, and that I was meant, to play for the Minnesota Twins. And I think God has a plan, and everything happens. And so I couldn't be happy with where I'm at and how things ended up.
And I'll close the book on your college career by just asking about this. I love to ask big power guys about this. Again, you hit 25 homers over 83 games, so there's lots to choose from here. But during your UNC career, what do you remember as your favorite homer?
It was by far the regional against my first regional game ever. We were playing UNC Wilmington, and we were down 1 run in the bottom of the ninth, and I hit a game-tying home run as the first batter of the inning. to tie up the game in the bottom of the ninth, and we ended up winning in the bottom of the ninth. So I think that was by far my favorite collegiate home run.
Are you a person who goes back and watches your highlights at all, or do you just relive that in your own head?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I definitely did it more when the season ended. But I think I watched a lot of the highlights, honestly, to just see, like, when you go through times like this, I mean, obviously with all the COVID stuff, but you want to see what works. You want to know when you're getting into instructs, like, you want to know, like, okay, this is the first time, you're seeing it live in a while. Like, you want to look back at and be able to have videos of when you're having success and be able to see, what you're doing. And so I don't watch them crazy, but I mean, I definitely watched them before. I'm not going to lie.
Fair enough. And you talked about really feeling like it's a good fit with the Twins, and I think you called them the best organization in baseball. They're certainly on a good run, getting the playoffs the last couple of years. But one thing that stood out to me when specifically you were drafted is that the Twins set the Major League record for home runs in a season in 2019, and you're their first pick after they do that, adding even more power to the system. How do you feel like you fit with the Twins? Like, even in the discussions afterwards and now your time in instructs, plugging yourself into that system, how do you feel like you fit?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, I think when I got drafted, my agent, and they were telling me, there was a couple teams in baseball that really didn't have a first baseman, at a really locked position, a lock guy for the first baseman position. And when I looked at it, and now I feel like I can be that guy. And now that I'm in the organization, when I went through instructs and all the top, position players and pitching prospects were there. And, there really wasn't a true set first baseman, besides me. And so when I look at that, I see, a good opportunity to move up the ranks. And then when you look at, like you said, with the home run stuff and the power potential, and for me, being that guy of, they want to swing at strikes and take balls and hit balls over the wall. I think, that's my philosophy and what I strive to do up at the plate, being a power guy and being a power guy and having the same hitting approach and the hitting philosophy that they share, and being, one of the few true first basemen in the organization. At least I think it gives me a real chance to shoot through the different levels of the organization.
And you touched on organizational philosophy there. Besides defensive versatility and you said getting spots all over the infield, is there any part of you that's changed, at least developmentally or in terms of focus, since you become a Twins prospect and you're under their tutelage now?
I don't know. I don't think any really focus has changed. I mean, when you get down there, and they knew that guys hadn't played in a while, and it was only 5 weeks. But it was really just, they wanted, when I first got down there, they wanted to learn more about me and my process, being that it was my first time in pro ball, and I hadn't been guys that had gone through, 60, 70 games or a couple full seasons like other guys that were there. And so they really want to know what my routine was like, hitting, throwing wise, and just learning more of what made me get to this level and what makes me feel, ready to play and ready to practice and certain stuff like that. And I think that for me was honestly one of the best things to be introduced to down there, because I got to learn that, they really care for the routine of each individual player and what makes, them unique. And when we get down there, they split guys up into the cages of who kind of has similar routines. And I think that's really special and honestly something that really helped me.
And we're just coming off the postseason here. The Twins, unfortunately, got knocked out in the wild card series by the Astros 2-0. But that was your first opportunity to watch a playoff series as a member of the organization. What was it like going through that, and how much were you picturing yourself, in the Twin Cities wearing Twins white in that situation? Like, what was it like watching that at home?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's run through my head of me thinking about like that. I know that I can be that guy standing at first base, and helping them, trying to get to a World Series. But then watch it. I mean, down there, you got guys in the organization that have been there for 4 or 5 years, and cheering on not just teammates but friends. Like I believe Alex Kirilloff had his first major league debut, and all those guys that went through the organization with them were like just so stoked watching the TV, like in the cages, stop to watch and look and cheer them on. And I think when being in Pro Bowl and realizing that, hey, like these are the kids that I'm with, but these are the guys that are cheering on, guys that you hate to say it, but ultimately like past them in the organization, but still rooting for them, cheering for them because they play for the same organization. Something like that is honestly truly special. And I think that's what made me so happy to be a part of this organization. Like I said, when you get to Pro Bowl, you hear, it's really individual, but seeing that and watching the Twins and watching guys cheer on each other and cheer on the team, it kind of brings back like that college baseball feeling.
And you mentioned Alex Kirilloff and his major league postseason debut, getting that opportunity. I feel like this would normally be a crazy question, but I've asked it of guys and then it's turned around and come true. So there are no crazy questions in 2020. How close to the majors do you feel right now? I know you just got drafted. I know you still haven't played a minor league game. You only have a couple weeks of instructs under your belt, but anything feels possible in baseball now after what we just saw. So how close do you even feel right now?
Yeah, I guess that is a tough one, but honestly, I feel that I'm close. Honestly, I feel that if I can get out there and start this full season, hopefully next year after spring training, and really show what I'm capable of in full season or however long it is, and show that I can play first base at a very, very high elite level. I think that I, like I said, could have a chance to rise through the ranks really quickly. And the fact that they need a first baseman now, but I don't think I'm too far. I think I'm right there, and I know what I'm capable of, and I know that when I get rolling, there's really no one like me in professional baseball.
And when you do picture that first minor league at bat, I'm knocking on wood. Hopefully, full season ball can start up next April like normal, and we're at a place where that can happen. But when you picture that first pro minor league at bat, wherever that's going to be, what are you going to be working through? What are you going to be thinking in that moment, and how's it going to go?
Yeah, you hope for the best, and confidence comes from preparation, and so I feel like I'm going to be prepared, and I'm going to feel good about it, and hopefully it's a home run, but I'm just looking to do damage every time I step up to the plate, and if I'm barreling up balls and hitting them hard, I'm going to have a lot of success. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to hit balls hard. I'm trying to hit balls far, and I'm trying to be disciplined up at the plate. So for me, those are the three biggest things. And I think when I do that, I'm going to have a really long and successful career in professional baseball.
Yeah, I do appreciate you saying, I hope it's a home run, sneaking that in there. Like, let's, if you're going to dream and shoot for the stars here, let's actually shoot for the stars. So good on that.
Yeah.
And Aaron, we'll end on this one because this is now officially your first off season ever. What is the plan going to be here for the next few months, knowing, we still don't fully know what spring training is going to look like and all that. But what is your off-season training plan looking like, and where are you hoping to be come spring, ready for that first spring training?
I'm honestly building off of the instructs. My body feels incredible. My swing feels great. My fielding feels great. And honestly, it's just going to be maintaining the strength and maintaining how my swing and my body feels. And just going through the off season and keeping that and keeping, honestly, just mentally feeling this way. And hopefully coming to spring training and wherever I go is where I go. And honestly, just being ready, like you said, for that first at bat and that first pitch, whenever it is, even if it's in spring training games and even after spring training, it's just being ready and being able to separate myself from day one as soon as I get there.
Very cool. Well, Aaron Sabato, number 8 prospect in the Twin system, a first-round pick this year out of UNC. You can find Aaron on Twitter for Twins fans or any UNC fans who don't follow him already. It's at Sabato Aaron. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. All the best going forward with that off-season plan and as we get ready for spring. And I'm sure we'll catch you somewhere down the line.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, I want to begin this week's segment with Ben, who is on the line with us. Hi, Ben.
Hello, Sam.
I want to begin this week's segment by thanking you, Ben. I know you didn't actually get to work as a poll worker yesterday, but you did volunteer. You did sit in a waiting area and try to offer your services. And as a member of New York City, as a member of the borough of Brooklyn, I would just wanted to thank you. How did that go, working as a poll worker, or your attempts to do that yesterday?
Yeah, well, it was one of the more long and boring days I've had in my life, but also kind of interesting just to, even though I never even got sent to a poll site, just to be, part of the process. I think a lot of people, I was feeling engaged, wanted to be part of the process in some way, wanted to do some small part to help people vote. So I signed up to be a poll worker, got assigned to standby. And, I live in Brooklyn, as do you, of course. I got sent to a building in Sunset Park as a standby worker. And I get there and there's a massive line out the door, and it's all standby workers. There were actually, they said about 1,200 standby poll workers in New York City. 1,200. I was one of them. And, it's a little unsettling just, with the pandemic still going and everything. But they placed us in this building in Sunset Park. It's Sunset Park being a neighborhood in Brooklyn. It's a Board of Elections building where they normally, like a huge warehouse, where they usually store all the election equipment. So that was all moved out for the day because the election was happening, of course. And we were on this huge warehouse floor in kind of a warehouse type building in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, as standby workers. And I spent 11 hours hearing other people's names get called. And they eventually sent us home. And that was my day. The somewhat short version of being a poll worker. They told us at the end that usually in a quote unquote normal election, they will have 400 standby workers in New York City, and about half of them show up. So, they recruit 400. So they have a supply of about 200. And that's based on their calculations of about 7% of poll workers overall not showing up. And this year, just more engagement, more people. So the fact that they were dealing with 1,200 standby workers, sent out probably at least, I'd say, 900 of those, and then still had hundreds such as myself to send home was, I would imagine, unprecedented in New York City election history.
Yeah, no, definitely sounds, like the enthusiasm to help out is great to see. And, especially now in a pandemic, I know it's not fun being around potentially 1,200 people like that, but knowing that normally poll workers, I feel like are retired folks and elderly folks who most likely should not be out and about in a pandemic right now. So seeing that many people step up or try to step up is really heartening and hopefully exciting for the future of civics here in Brooklyn and New York City at large. But to segue into that, or out of that, and into your story from this week, Ben, one of the greater minor league initiatives of the year, and obviously given everything that's happening in the country, one of the greater initiatives anywhere sports wise of the year has been organizations, sporting organizations. We've seen this a lot in the NBA. Some MLB teams have done this as well, opening up their doors, becoming an early polling site. And that extended to the minor leagues with Tulsa, who opened up ONEOK Field, the home of the Drillers, to early voting there in Oklahoma. It seemed to go really well. It seemed like a really successful initiative. What can you tell us about the background of what they did at ONEOK Field this past week?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, sporting venues are becoming more and more utilized as poll sites. And I think that, really started with the NBA players demanding that all of their home facilities be used as poll sites, which I just think is great. And, as that was all happening in the culture, I kept poking around saying, hey, are any minor league teams doing this? It just seems like just something we should see more of, for these community assets to be used in a way that is very befitting of a community asset. And I did a story last month about Greenville Drive, who tried to, but I guess the county didn't think they had, gotten in touch in time and just didn't think logistically it would work out. So, Greenville pivoted and hosted a day of action instead with a lot of civic-minded events. And so I thought that no one in minor league baseball was doing it. And then I caught wind of the Drillers doing it. And they had 3 days of early voting. ONEOK Field is, as an aside, it's in Tulsa's Greenwood district, which is a long history that we can't fully get into right now. But that was the quote unquote Black Wall Street of the early 20th century that was then, decimated by truly one of the most horrific moments in American history, the Tulsa race riots. So it's a little weird just squaring family-friendly minor league baseball in general with that location of such history and in the city of Tulsa. But I do think that made it. I didn't go into that aspect in my story too much, but I think that I like that aspect even better. That in a place with such history and often such a brutal history in a lot of ways, is now being used for civic engagement to, perhaps change the course of the country, or at the very least for everyone in Tulsa County to have their voices heard. It was the only early voting site in all of Tulsa County, which is the second largest county in all of Oklahoma. They had approximately 13,000 voters there over a 3-day period. And especially in this era of social distancing, a modern minor league ballpark, ONEOK Field, opened in, I believe, 2011, I want to say. It was a great place for voting, and the long lines that come with an engaged electorate, because they could utilize the entire concourse as a place for people to line up and queue up, which they did. And also, I thought kind of interestingly, and just kind of a fun thing to imagine if you know minor league ballparks, they actually took out their concession registers, the point of sale for their concession stands on the concourse, and then the Board of Elections came in and set up their computers in the concession stand. So voters, once they got through the line, went to a concession stand and got their ballots, gave their name and their information and got their ballots from the concession stands, and then went to vote at a booth on the concourse. And by all accounts, it went really smoothly. They had, as I said, over 13,000 total votes, which was nearly 10% of all the early votes cast in all of Oklahoma. And, I write these stories just to do my small part in, just advancing the idea. I just think we should see many more minor league ballparks being used as early voting and just, flat out voting sites for the communities in which they operate.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would just want to reemphasize what Ben said about looking up Black Wall Street. If you get a chance, look up that part of the history. It wasn't something that was taught to me growing up. I didn't know much about it until recent years. I'm sure people of Tulsa know a lot about it, but for anybody at home who doesn't know the history of that area and the role it plays in American history and the role it plays in the bad sides of our history, certainly in racism and things of the like, definitely look that up and educate yourself on something like that. But Ben, you talked about getting things going and how they were able to make this. I think you have a quote in here saying it was pretty turnkey. You talked about the concession stuff, but in terms of coordinating with the local election boards, you can't just throw your doors open and say like, hey, come vote here. We've got some ballots. There's a lot that needs to go into this. How far back did they start this planning? And how much did they actually have to do with the election board to get ONEOK Field ready for early voting there in Tulsa?
Well, the word turnkey, which is in my story, and you just used, means an event. You hear minor league baseball, executives use it a lot, meaning an event that can basically slot into the existing space with a minimum of effort. So it was a turnkey event. As I said, they basically had room on the concourse to do what they needed to do, and put their computers and other equipment that they needed as election workers in the concession stands. And one thing I found really interesting about this is, the Dodgers, or the Drillers, are the AA affiliate of the Dodgers. The Dodgers announced that they would be a polling site. That was kind of through LeBron James' organization, a partnership with More Than a Vote. And the Drillers community relations manager, this is probably at some point in later in August, maybe early September, says, hey, we're affiliate of the Dodgers. The Dodgers are being a polling site. Why can't we do it? The GM was this is Taylor Levesey, the team's community relations manager. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. And he just cold calls the election board and says, "Hey, would you be interested in doing your early voting here?" And the elections board is like, "Yeah, that'd be great. It's way better than a library. Just space wise, logistically." So they came out, checked it out, developed a plan, and just did it. And I guess in a way, it makes me a little more disappointed that more teams didn't do it. I know, the bureaucratic maneuvering certainly varies from county to county and state to state, but this was really just hearing about a parent clubs initiative and saying, why don't we do it too? And it happened. In this case, it was pretty easy, again, pretty turnkey. and something I really want to promote as something that can be done in the future.
Yeah, and in terms of other benefits, because I'm not entirely sure how this works at election stations. Ben, I know you're not necessarily an expert on this, and especially since it changes county by county and state by state. But like, can you sell concessions there? Can you sell gear? Like, can you have the team shop open if it's away from the polling booths? Like, there are other benefits here than just being a pillar of your community. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some business aspects. I mean, as I said, the actual concession stands were used for the voting process, but the team did, I think at the entrance, people were entering on the first base side. They did set up a concession stand. It was really rainy and cold the first day on Thursday. So I think they sold a lot of like hot coffee or hot chocolate and coffee. They had a merchandise tent as well, which sold a lot of umbrellas. For that first day that was rainy. Maybe some more sunglasses on the other days. So they had some small tents set up on the exterior of the facility, is my understanding. So they were able to, generate some revenue via being a polling site. And also this, again, was drawing from the entirety of Tulsa County, which, as I mentioned, I don't know the exact population, but the second largest county in all of Oklahoma. So that drew a lot of people, 13,000 people, and a lot of them, had just never thought to come to a game. So it also, I'm sure, put in a lot of people's minds like, oh, what, this is here. We come here to vote. Maybe we want to check this out when it's actually hosting a minor league baseball game or any other type of event that the team is hosting. So I think it's just by existing as a polling site, it is functioning as a form of PR just for the team and its presence and what the stadium actually is, as opposed to what fans might imagine it to be if they're not really front of mind minor league baseball fans. And yes, there are, I think, some small, concessions and merchandise opportunities on top of that as well. And, so win-win in that regard, in addition to, I think, the main thing of just, as a community asset, making sure you're making your facility available for such things that really benefit the community.
Yeah. And I don't mean to ask that question by way of saying, like, isn't there money to be made from this? Like, the most important aspect of this definitely is getting people to vote safely and, bringing them to a big space that allows many people to vote at the same time. Because as you mentioned, Ben, Tulsa County is a big population. Just looked it up while you were talking. The last census update or estimate was 650,000 people in Tulsa County. So you need big spaces like ONEOK Field. Ben, thanks so much for joining us this week. I know you're taking some time off, so we appreciate it. Before I let you go, I just want to wish you happy early birthday. It is your birthday on Friday, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right. Well, everybody at home, tweet at Ben at Ben's Biz on Friday. If you missed it, if you're listening to this over the weekend, happy belated birthday works just as well. But happy birthday, Ben. We'll catch you soon.
Hey, thanks, Sam. I appreciate that. And yes, happy birthday to me and happy birthday to everyone born on November 6, 1978. It's great to be oh wait, I just said 19. I didn't mean to give away my age. I didn't mean to do that. Anyway, I'm a Scorpio.
I was great. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, man. I mean, Sam, just Sam.
We will say goodbye for this week's episode of the show before the show. But before we do, Sam has our nationwide prospect fact of the week.
Yeah, so we had a discussion earlier about the Gold Glove winners and the two highlights for us as prospect writers and guys who we most recently just covered. The highlights were Evan White winning at first base in the AL and Luis Robert winning in the center field position in the AL as well. Tyler mentioned this before, but just to reiterate it, Luis Robert is the first White Sox rookie since Tommy Agee in 1966 to win a Gold Glove. So that's pretty cool for him. Evan White in the Mariners organization, that's a little more recent, 2001. I would love to play the trivia game, but I'll just give you the answer. It's Ichiro. Ichiro was the last Mariners rookie to win a Gold Glove award. But Evan White does get a first in his own right in that he is the first rookie first baseman to ever win a Gold Glove award, which is pretty exciting. And again, living up to expectations. We set the bar incredibly high for him about what he could do defensively in the major leagues. And yes, he had his struggles offensively this year, but I think if even he was league average, he would have been a rookie of the year candidate. He can still grow into that. We'll see what's to come from him, but the Mariners obviously think highly of him. They gave him an MLB deal before the season. And here he is already bringing hardware back to Seattle.
And with that, we will say goodbye for this week's episode of the show before the show. Before we do, we gave you an impassioned plea to vote last week on the episode. And obviously, we can take full credit for what seems like the largest turnout in American history for an election. So good work, everyone. We did it. We did it.
I was going to say,
and by we, I mean me and Sam.
Yeah, which part are we taking credit for?
We turned out like 140 million people, Sam.
Oh, just
the listenership
turnout
of this show.
Yes.
Right.
Turnout. I will take credit for turnout. Any other results, don't blame it on me.
Yeah, no, it's just the populace. We don't, if one way or another, we didn't influence a result. We just got 140 million people to go to the poll. Me and you to fill out ballots.
Absolutely. Putting it on my resume as we speak.
Surprisingly, Kanye didn't win.
Oh, man, I really wish I had you know what? The one that's sitting there was, I guess he's now an election dropout and not just a college dropout.
That's good. He also deleted his tweet last night, which I thought was hilarious, where he just said, "Welp, Kanye 2024." He deleted it. A little bummed about that. Welp as an inclusion in a tweet is always entertaining.
Yes. And as somebody pointed out, I hope political candidates going forward are taking notes from Kanye and how to concede an election.
Welp. Guess I'm not going to win this one. Oh, man. We got a lot more stuff coming to the site. Our State of the System stories are continuing. We're recording this on Wednesday. I believe tomorrow, my story on the New York Metropolitans will be out. Andrew Battaferrano had one on the Colorado Rockies earlier this week. The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim are coming up as well. And a lot of good stuff on the site right now. So go check it out on MILB.com. And until next week, he's Sam. I'm Tyler. I'll talk to you then.